Hi everyone. So, surprise, I'm here with Pam, funnily enough, in her sitting room. And we've just been getting to know each other. I mean, we already know each other a bit, but I thought I'd drive over here and have a chat and just we had a lovely lunch and we went for a walk in the woods and we've been talking. And as you can imagine, we've been contemplating and going very deep into lots of subjects. And so if you see me looking over there, I'm looking at Pam over there rather than on my screen. I'll try and do a bit of both. But we've been talking mostly about the year 2026 and the year 2027. And partly this is my framing because I wanted to invite Pam to make some commentary on particularly on next year, 2026, which I've coined a term for it, the year of the closing door. And we'll kind of get into what we mean by that. But it's going to be, I think, a very powerful year for many of us and for the planet, and feels like a ramp into the year 2027. And so it feels like we need to understand these energies really well as best as we can so that we can be prepared for them. And so that's really why we're here. And also because I was explaining to Pam how I'm in these next 2 years, I'm being something of a guinea pig in a way, because I'm changing my life around, partly because of that's the phase of life I'm in, because I'm in my second Saturn return. But I'm also moving my life and my whole business and everything in the direction of where this energy is shifting for the planet. And I'm hoping that if I describe some of that here, that it can be of inspiration and use, because then I'm a bit of a guinea pig, because I've been thinking about this for a long time. And in my world of the Gene Keys, 2027 is a key pivotal year. And if you know human design, you'll also know that. And if you don't know Gene Keys or human design, you'll hear Pam's also, you may have already heard your version, Pam, of why 2026 and 27 are like pivotal years for our planet. So I pause there and let you kind of say
Yeah,
something?
sure. Yeah, it's been wonderful to spend some time with Richard. Luckily, the weather was very kind to us. The woods were beautiful with all the autumn colours. It's been really glorious. And going back to late 2024, when I spotted this particular unique astrological configuration, which I've talked about a great deal, and I started to talk about metamorphosis being very much led by Sedna's symbolism in her particular geometry to Pluto and her mirror right now. I was thrilled because the first person I came across who was saying something similar was Richard, with his most famous gene key of the dragonfly and metamorphosis from the water nymph. And in his beautiful work of the gene keys, particularly gene key 55, that of freedom, that of the dragonfly, he was seeing the same time span as I was seeing. So that was my first excitement. Somebody else was using the same language and looking at the same time frame. And since then, other people have plugged in from their whatever their modality is, or their channeling, whatever, to this very unique period in time, 2027, 2025, 2026, 2027. And then that unique configuration that I've been talking about starts to break up. Saturn's already moved on, Uranus moves faster than Neptune and Pluto, and this mini triangle, as we've called it, starts to break up. So these seem to be the critical years of accelerated evolution, concentrated, accelerated evolution. And of course, our evolution goes on forever, and our evolution isn't determined by calendar years. But nevertheless, these 3 years have different qualities, certainly as I'm looking at it astrologically. Um, and so we had to get together and dig deeper into 2026, because we're coming to the end of 2025. And my goodness, this has been a fast moving year, but it's going to be even faster next year. We are really starting to see the ending of the old world, things collapsing, and that's going to continue and accelerate through 2026 as well. So that's just really seems doing a little bit of setup from my point of view, Richard.
Yeah, thank you. And so the using the gene keys, which is using similar mapping to the human design system, as I said, if you know that system. One of the ways that the founder of Human Design, Ra, he looked at global cycles, and he created a really interesting way of mapping those global cycles, and it sort of maps this huge grand cycle that we talk about, the precession of the equinox and these yugas that also we could get into later. But it's essentially it's a way of looking right back 16,000 BC. That particular round begins, and it's coming towards its sort of finale now. And with the year 2027 is a pivotal point because it's a shifting of one of these major, what Ra called cogs and gears. And what's so interesting about that is that when they shift, it's like it's quite an instantaneous event, right? So even though in human history we see it gradually, it means that when the gear shifts to another archetype, or in this case another gene key, so it shifts into gene key 55, which is the key of freedom itself, then the old energy is literally not receiving any fuel anymore. So because all the fuel is going into the new flowers, the new buds that are kind of then coming out. So that's why I've coined 2026 year of the closing door, because it's the very last blast of that old energy. By the time it gets to 2027 and early 2027, it's actually all dried up. So all the nutrition for the, if you like, for the old paradigm is drying up in this next year, whilst the new shoots are appearing at the same time. And Ra called this the cross of the sleeping phoenix, which is a delightful mythic name, because the ashes, the phoenix obviously rises up out of the ashes of the old. And so 2026 is the last chance, in a way, of the old energy to kind of have any say in anything. And so that has a lot of bearing for us as individuals, because it means that if we've got any unprocessed stuff lying around, then 2026 is an amazing year to kind of get it dealt with, anything. So what I've decided to do in my life and through the Gene Keys is run a year-long series of retreats that, you know, in what I call the Golden Path program, which is a program using the Gene Keys that's designed to throw out all the shadows inside us, transmute them into gifts. And it's a deep process. And I was sharing with Pam earlier, because she was saying, wow, that's quite a thing to commit to. And I said, yeah, it certainly is. It's kind of wild. But I was saying that I remembered a friend of mine who had gone on a Tibetan Buddhist retreat. This was some time ago. And she'd done one of those 3-year sealed retreats. You go in for 3 years, the doors are sealed behind you. You're in there with the lamas and you're doing these practices. And then you come out 3 years later. And I remember her going in, and I was one of the first people she met when she came out. And I remember her eyes when she came out. She was on fire. Every part of her body, she'd just changed. She was a completely different person. She was absolutely on fire, lit up from the inside out. And you could tell that her whole destiny had been reconfigured. And I thought about that a lot. And I thought, you know, that's actually the level of commitment that this year, 2026, is asking for in us. That's why I created this big journey, so that people who feel they're ready can make that massive commitment to their own inner transmutation process. Now, you don't have to do mine, but I want you to be inspired, I hope, so that you can figure out, well, what's my version of that I need to do? Because you want to, when you get to 2027, you want to be able to look back and go, wow, 2026 was one hell of a year. That was a very difficult year for the planet, because I suspect it will be. And I think many of us do. And so you might be one of the people that says, well, I had a brilliant year. because at the beginning of the year, I made this massive commitment to my own inner process. And I now, I wasn't so fazed by everything that was going on out there. And I stayed true to this process and this program because the door was closing. The door on that old energy and that old paradigm was closing. And I sucked out every part of my own shadow process while it was closing. And now I'm ready for the new when I hit 2027. We don't know what that new energy will look like. We just know that that's when the kind of all the energy starts pouring into the new shoots, into the new consciousness. And the old will then, the old ways, the old paradigms, the old patriarchal systems, will then start to decline much more quickly because there's no juice left. There's no inner juice left in the programming. So that could be quite frightening, for the mass consciousness, because you start to lose the things that you've taken for granted for a long time. They start to kind of not always be there, and that might be a process that lasts, decades even. So the decline is going to speed up, but at the same time, so's the awakening. So that's why I'm pointing 2026 as a really important year, that you get clear in yourself. What is the commitment that I need to make? And how can I be really decisive right from the beginning and set your trajectory clear from your heart, from your body, so that you have an amazing year. And also that's going to be part of that journey is going to be us supporting each other, whatever does happen on the outside, and coming together in intimacy and in community to support each other so that we remind each other we need not be freaked out by whatever's going on outside. We can act. This is part of the closing of the door, and we need to stay focused on the mission that we made the commitment to right at the beginning. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's wonderful to hear you speak of this, Richard, because I've been talking about this in my own language of saying that anything that is not born of love is going to crack and crumble right now, because we're moving to this higher frequency of love and all these very high frequency light codes that are coming in from our sun and the galactic core, etc. It is changing our biology, I believe. It's changed, and you've talked about this as well with Pluto moving into Gate 41 on January the 30th this year, and how that was triggering, I think, methionine. Methionine, which is going to create a mutation across all species, a genetic mutation across all species. I remember you saying so. We're changing biologically. We're changing in consciousness, I think, very rapidly. And so, yes, anything of low frequency is going to crumble, and the crumbling is going to accelerate from this point on. And so we're no longer in rehearsal. That was the few months in the summer Northern Hemisphere, winter in the Southern Hemisphere. That was our rehearsal. We're now in the stage of metamorphosis, this quiet wintertime Northern Hemisphere. But from early next year, and I can quote specific dates, it's gonna be go time. And so this is the time to choose, to decide, to set your vision. Don't just hope. Hope is a wobble. But as Richard said, absolutely commit to the vision of the higher self that you want to become. Because there's no more rehearsal time now. We're in it, and it's going to move very fast. The energy next year is going to be even faster than this year, and 2027 even faster again. It's not slowing down anytime soon. So this is the time. There's no more wobble time. This is the time to commit. So get very clear. If you meditate on who is the best self I can be, who is my highest self, what steps can I take to make that dream become real? Because the symbolism astrologically, as of the 20th of February next year, is about making real the dream and taking action on it, taking action steps from that point on. So we're absolutely in this crucible of change. And it's so interesting that Richard, from his different discipline and modality, is seeing exactly what I'm seeing astrologically. So yes, the old will continue to crumble, but please don't give it any attention. Just let it go. Just don't energize the old life support system, because that isn't going to because what people tend to do is get caught up in the drama, pour energy into what they absolutely don't want, and then blame it for giving them a hard time. We are actually in a vicious circle with that. So really commit to the best you can possibly be, and I think that's thrilling. I think, as I understand it, this lifetime is the only lifetime where we're going to move from a kind of regular 3D being to being able to achieve much higher dimensions within this one lifetime. But we have to commit to it, and this is our kind of one-time shot at it, as it were. So it's very exciting, it's very exhilarating, but it's going to take the mastery of our thinking, the mastery of our state of being. And I would also add that have a positive lens, have a very positive lens on how you expect this to go. This is going to be great. It's going to be fabulous. Think of that mantra that Cynthia Sue Larson was telling us about, which is, how good can it get? Make that your rolling mantra day to day. How good can it get? And whether it's a challenging thing or a wonderful thing, how good can it get? Because that's going to shift up your frequency every time you roll that around your head. So, yeah, that's what I'd say from my point of view. Yeah,
totally. And in my community, in the Gene Keys, we're going to be focusing, a lot of our energy on those higher frequencies, on this, we call them the cities. They get the gifts and the city. The cities are like, if you get your Gene Keys profile, if you haven't already done that, you can look in it from genekeys.com and you can see your city. So you can see like the words that represent your heightened states of consciousness. And you can also see the shadows, right? So that's what you're going to throw out in 2026. That's what you're going to, you're going to transmute rather than throw out. But you're going to let them go, and you're going to watch those patterns, and you're going to see that there's an incredible opportunity for alchemy to take place. And it'll be easier than it ever has been before, because you're in harmony with the cosmic divine currents that are moving through all of us. So you're going to find it easier to let go of these shadow patterns, and you're going to find it easier, to be less provoked by whatever it is, the news headlines or the left or the right or the whatever it is that really provokes you sometimes and winds you up, because we're human. You'll find it easier to let go of that, because on the inside, you'll be giving your energy to a heightened state of consciousness, whatever your cities are. So we're going to be focusing a lot of our attention on our Buddha nature. And we're doing a real focus on embodiment, on embodying heightened states of consciousness in the body, right? Because that's in the biology, feeling them in the body, so that it's not just a head in the clouds idea. It's actually something, so if we use a word like ecstasy, or we use a word like rapture, or these are some of the names of the city, or celebration, we're actually embodying those principles in our lives. And so that's why you're right, Pam, it can be an amazing year when we start to embody those principles, but not at the expense of like bypassing the shadows. That's part of the journey, right? So it's a very juicy year in terms of us needing to ground higher frequencies down into the form, into the body. And that means we're going to need a kind of discipline that I would say in 2026, an inner discipline to stay with the process that you've chosen, that you've decided, or the relationship. One of the things I was showing with Pam is looking at the year ahead. There's quite a focus on partnership, on divine. There's a line in the Gene Keys from my new book, which is not out yet, by the way. It's called Divine Monogamy. And it doesn't mean you have to be monogamous, but it means that you don't let energy slip away from you out of your relationships, out of your friendships, out of your partnerships, anywhere that you have a partnership with anything, is that if you're not 100% in that, then your energy is leaking somewhere in your life. And you either got to address it powerfully and quickly, or you need to let it go. What you don't want is a halfway house. So you've got to be really decisive and clear in your heart about what's good for you and what's right for you, because you don't want entropy. You don't want things, because if you have entropy in your relationships, you have entropy in your finances, in your health, and in your body, everywhere. It shows up everywhere. So relationships become a really important part of the focus for next year. That's why I'm putting on also the middle part of my, I should say, like the first 4 months of the year, which Pam can talk about in a moment from the astrology component. Like, so January, February, March, April, we're doing a retreat on purpose, life purpose. And these are online retreats, so you can do them wherever you are. And then we're having May off, kind of. You can have any time off in this year. And then June to November, end of November, 6 months is what we call the Venus retreat, which is love and partnership. And that's the main part of the inner work that we'll be working on next year. So purpose is the grounding. And then that second whole phase of the year, in the Gene Keys community, which is a global community, we're going to be digging deep into personal wound patterns, trauma that we incurred from our childhood, and we're going to be drawing it out. We're going to be leaving it down the river. We're going to be moving into new models and new possibilities. And whether you're alone or whether you're with someone or whether you're in, we all have a relationship to intimacy in our lives. And this is going to be about building more intimacy into our lives so that we feel better supported, and we feel better cared for. And that starts inside us. And that's the Venus sequence process that we're going to go on. It's a big retreat. It's a big piece of work, inner work. Done it before many times, the Gene Keys community, so it's tried and tested. We're going to bring new energies into it this year and new surprises and do it in a new way. We're going to have some surprise guests. We're going to have, I'm throwing everything I've got at it. It's like, this is the last series of online courses I'm giving, because I'm moving into a new phase of my own life. So I want to make these amazing. And if you want to experience the Gene Keys with me, online at least, then this is going to be your last chance this year. Except for the third component, which is called the Pearl sequence, so we'll take December off. We'll have like breath out the end of 2026, and then we'll hit 2027, which is the year of the cosmic change, prophesied from many, for a long time through the human design and Gene Keys. This is the year the dragonfly takes to the air, and for the first time, we experience the lift of the higher consciousness. Not everyone, but those who've done that inner work, it can be an incredible year. The 2026 is the ramp, and 2026 is the launch. 27 is the launch. And so I'm doing January, February, March, April. We're doing what we call the Pearl Retreat, which is about collective prosperity. And it's a collective phenomenon. It's about the collective human being, collective consciousness. And that's where abundance comes from. It doesn't come from us making wealth and accumulating lots of money and then tucking it away somewhere. It's actually collective phenomenon that opens up as our brain, as our heart opens up, and we start to collaborate with wider fields of higher frequency energy. And so we will then finish, this is my map of the next year or so. We'll finish that in April. We'll probably have a celebration in May. And then the summer off, and then I'm then doing a US tour in September, October, 2 months, going all around the USA, with a bus and a bunch of friends, and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. I hope you'll come and join me if you can. We'll do some online things as well if it's too far for you. I understand. And then I'm drawing a line after 2027, and because no one knows after that year what paradigm will be in this world, and I don't know. So I just have no idea. None of us really know. But these 2 years, an incredible opportunity.
Yeah, and I resonate with so much of that, Richard, truly, from the astrological point of view, because it's a thrilling opportunity, and for us to have landed in this lifetime and being given this opportunity is quite extraordinary. So see it from that excited point of view. And when you're talking about divine relationship, I think that's also a divine relationship with yourself. Because the inward process is really important in this, because it's going to get crazier up there at the 3D level. It's going to get crazy and loud and shouty and ridiculous. And So the more we need to turn inwards, and these simple principles of close your eyes, bare feet on the grass, listen to your heartbeat, listen to your breath, these simple principles, and your state of being your absolutely top priority from which everything cascades. And I've said it many times, but it could not be more important, because you get into the habit of, I'm living from the inside out, not the outside in. I'm living from joy, from peace, from love, what I decide, and I will dominate my day with those frequencies, and that will create my reality. And the more of us join together in our little bliss bubbles, then that really affects the collective reality as well. And so, yes, it's a mastery, because we've got to stop that kind of subconscious run of, oh, it never works for me, I'm always a loser, look, something else has gone. It's just stop the grunge. Post-it notes around your house. What's your state of being? What are you thinking about? So when we get super clear, super focused, and say, I am going to go for this. And you're absolutely right, I think, Richard, from an astrological point of view, in terms of collective consciousness, because that's the Aquarian energy. In this mycelium, these tree roots coming together as a family of frequencies to support each other. And wealth and abundance will have a very different meaning going forwards. It will not be, as you say, your status, how big your car is, what your bank account numbers say. It will be, how much love and joy do I have in my life? That will be what really counts going forward. Because, if you think of indigenous people who lived so harmoniously with nature, they didn't have bank accounts to worry about, or pay the gardener and the childminder. It was a complete sharing of an extended organic family, where everybody cared for each other, everybody supported and loved each other. And this is the kind of energy we're moving towards, that kind of remembrance of ancient wisdom of the indigenous people that we still hold. We hold it in our DNA, we hold it in the cells, the water in our cells. And remember, it's the water that is also being upgraded, if you like, with all these high frequency energies of love coming in. So we are imbibing through the water things which are actually helping to elevate our biology at the same time as all of our simple practices as well. So just the key thing is, keep your focus, keep your discipline, live in joy, live in love, live in peace, and things will just magnetize towards you into the vision that you're forming. It's almost like, I remember when I was buying that small house in France, and all around my kitchen I had photos of France and those electric blue colors, blue and yellow, typically French. And the little house I ended up buying, the pictures I had around my kitchen were almost like a photo of what I ended up magnetizing to me, manifesting. And so I think this is immensely exciting. And as Richard said, it really is the kind of the ramp to what we're going to see in 2027. And it's so interesting the way you've divided certainly 2026, because if I'm looking at it astrologically, we have this very important one-time conjunction at 0 of Aries between Saturn and Neptune. That is 044 of Aries. That hasn't happened for almost 6,000 years. And this is pure potentiality. This is the creator degree. And our future is going to be more unknown than it's ever been, because we've left the tram tracks now. And Richard doesn't know what our future will be. I don't know, because we are stepping into our co-creator role in a bigger way than we've ever done. But we're recognizing our spiritual sovereignty. And so therefore we have more latitude than we have ever had before, when we were living in more of a kind of victim psychology. And so February is a big deal. February 20th, 2026. And that's really about making real the dream, but taking action on making real the dream. And yes, absolutely, the collapse of the old order would continue. We have Uranus pretty much exactly conjunct a fixed star called Algol, which is about losing your head. So we've already started to see people in the public eye starting to leave the public eye very, very suddenly. Certainly in the UK, that's true. That will continue and accelerate. As Richard said, we just don't have the energy for that those old structures. And Uranus is in that position, or certainly now this month in November, all of January, all of February, and early March. And then we get into some very different energy, because at the end of April, 26th of April, Uranus on its 84-year cycle moves fully into Gemini until 2033. So all of the outer planets, Pluto's already there fully in Aquarius, Saturn, Neptune fully into Aries, 20th of February, Uranus fully into Gemini, 26th of April. All of the outer planets are now in their new signs, and they're not moving back as they did in 2025.
And then we also have Atlas, right?
Yes.
Leaving the solar system in April.
Yes, it's apparently on the current speed and trajectory, 17th of April. But what's fascinating, and I only discovered this a few days ago, somebody very kindly sent this to me, on the 16th of March, when it's closest to Jupiter, before it starts to exit our solar system. Of course, Jupiter is about wisdom. Jupiter is about belief system. It's about expansion. It's about our future. But 16th of March is also the celebration or the consecration of what happened in 1244, March 16th, 1244, because 220 Cathars, men, women, and children, died in the fire at Montségur, the Cathar castle, Montségur, which I've visited several times. And the Cathar people, and I feel it deeply in my heart, you might have heard the past life story, they represented the way of love. The way of love, and they were very persecuted at the time in the 1200s by the Catholics. You probably know this from history, and so March the 16th is a day of consecration of those who goosebumps sacrificed their lives for the way of love.
It's also, isn't it, the Ides of March?
The Ides of March.
It's a traditional date of warning, isn't it? Beware the Ides of March.
So those people who have tried to control others or persecute others. Yes, absolutely. So that's the kind of echo that we are now leaving behind as 3i Atlas comes closest to Jupiter. And Jupiter is also about freedom, actually.
Yeah, and
it's a planet of freedom.
That old patriarchal energy is the energy of the dictator.
Yes,
right? Julius Caesar,
the controller.
Was the first of the dictators.
Yeah.
That in Rome, he was the first major dictator.
Yeah.
And then the whole line of dictators followed him right up until where we are now.
Yeah.
And so it's the ending of energy for that role.
It's so incredible that day, and as I say, I only discovered this a few days ago, that very day, March the 16th, is so remarkable in the Cathar calendar. And the Cathars, of course, were at the time, I think, some of the purest people who they followed the way of love. They didn't kill to eat. They were very loving people. But they weren't in line with the beliefs of the Catholic Church, and the Catholics don't come that well out of those massacres, because it was actually a genocide of the Cathar people that you're probably familiar with. So it's so interesting. Yes, Jupiter is freedom. Jupiter is release. Jupiter is the future. Jupiter is the planet of expansion. So. Yeah, it feels right on time in terms of divine timing.
Incredible object, this celestial object that's kind of this Atlas that's moving through the solar system. Like, it's very inspiring, isn't it? Like this distant object that no one knows where it's come from or how far it's traveled or where it's going, but it just comes like straight through the heart of our solar system at this specific time. I see it like a big brush, like a big broom. It's two things. It's like a broom sweeping away the old, but as you said, it's also seeding all kinds of celestial energies here behind it, and then it's gone. And we were like, what the heck was that?
Yeah, and it's right on divine timing. Yeah. The precision of it coming closest to Earth on the 19th of December, right on that winter solstice, is extraordinary. And several people I'm having conversations with, and Kelly Kolodny with Archangel Raphael comes to mind, particularly talking about the birth of a new galactic consciousness on December 21st.
Yeah, magical, a very magical December this year. I'm going to be offering a secret gift. I'm not telling you what it is, but please stay dialed to Gene Keys and my mailing lists if you're interested, because I'm going to kind of share something really beautiful and exquisite for free over the December period that will hopefully kind of engage you in kind of harvesting some of that celestial magic that has been sown just very recently at that time. It's a very special time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
real magic.
yeah,
Yeah, real magic. So, forget the hype of Christmas if you even ever
yeah,
celebrated it, and start to celebrate the magic of your own divinity.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So, when is the next kind of trimester for you coming after April, Richard?
Um, After April is well, as I said, then there's a kind of transitionary period of May, and then June we kick into this new sequence. That's a 6 month journey that leads to the rest of next year. Um, and at the same time, as say like in my work, Gene Keys, we have our new app coming out, so, and there's a lot of things happening coinciding. So the new app comes out in the spring, which we've been putting a huge amount of energy and investment into for a long time. And that's going to be a beautiful thing, I think, really beautiful way of connecting people in a special, magical way that I hope many of you will enjoy. I'll have a complete free version and then, other stuff. Um, and then my book on contemplation, which I think you know because you kindly gave me an
Beautiful.
endorsement, is being republished by Hay House, and that's coming out also in June. So it's a big there's a big sort of expansion for me personally, and I'm hoping anyone who's committed, I think you could follow us in your own life. You could follow a similar pattern where June becomes the expansion, naturally is at that anyway, and then you begin a real focus of the second half of that year because Atlas is gone. These old energies, there's now a kind of there's a sort of a foundation for something even more powerful to happen. So for me, I would say the deepest work is then done through June, July,
Yeah.
August, September next year, and that so we're clearing the way in the early spring, and then we do the deep shadow work later because the door is almost closing then, right?
Yeah.
The door is like just a slightly ajar, and so those are like perhaps the more stubborn patterns that need to be thrown out. They're the oldest ones, you know what I mean, at the bottom of the barrel, you know, the deepest shadowed material. And so I don't know what this is going to look like on the outside in the world. I imagine pretty chaotic. I imagine there could be a ramping up of fear. And I want to reassure people that whatever it is that's happening externally, it's a manifestation of something that's happening on the inside.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And just let all of that noise go. And I know it's extremely painful and heartrending if there's war and suffering to humans and children, adults,
yeah,
children, animal, all of it, nature, trees, forests. But try not to energize what is dying. And shift your consciousness to a higher level to say, no, I refuse to go on to the fear timeline. Love and joy are acts of defiance, and I'm committing to creating a higher octave of consciousness because they're two very clear collective timelines. Now, eventually, we're all going to link up on the unity consciousness plane. We've chosen fast track or slow track, but commit to playing your part in keeping on the high consciousness timeline because it really is fast and super exciting. It's interesting to me that in numerology, 2025 has been a 9 year of endings. And next year is a 1 year, 226 out of 10, then numerologists call that a one. It's also the year of the fire horse in Chinese astrology. And the fire horse is about freedom, independence, dynamic, bold moves, big jumps forward. And I think we are going to not only get waves of evolutionary consciousness and light coming in, but we ourselves individually and collectively are going to be making big changes, big, bold moves to change our lives. And what's fascinating about the way that Richard has divided his year up so far is it fits with what I'm seeing astrologically, February, April, those final outer planets into their new signs. And then when we get into June and July, it's a real peak actually in the year astrologically because we have Uranus square the nodal axis. And so what that means is that our collective soul's path of growth has to incorporate Uranus in a bigger way. Now that can have several expressions. It can be that we have to incorporate more truth coming to us, a bigger sense of awakening. it's a kind of jump. It's always quantum jumps in our energy, in our perception. It's never linear. It could be more galactic connection. Uranus, the outsider, the maverick, the foreigner, the galactic. And so it could be also quite revolutionary. This revolutionary energy is going to continue until 2035, but that doesn't have to be people on the streets with placards. It can be a revolution of choice. You choose self-employment if you can. You choose to shop at local farmers markets, not at supermarkets. You choose in whatever way you can to remove yourself from something that you don't feel is coherent to where you are at any longer. So it can be a revolution of choice. And then the big, yes, June, end of June, Jupiter moves into Leo. And that's because that's very powerful as well. And all of June, the North Node is conjunct a fixed royal star called Fomalhaut, who is linked to Archangel Gabriel, who is about the spiritual teacher. So this sense of the spiritual is very strong. Chiron moves into Taurus, then stays in Taurus till September that year, 2026, moves fully into Taurus at the end of April 2027. So I think this will, because Chiron is the wounded healer, so it makes us aware of our shadows, of where we're still wounded, but also it's the healer. Taurus is our physical bodies, but it's also the earth itself, fixed earth. So this is going to make us more aware of, yes, our own shadows and where our wounds still lie, but also how we've wounded Earth, how we've desecrated her, polluted her, toxified her. And so there will be much greater moves to heal our own wounds, but also heal the Earth with all kinds of amazing new technologies, or maybe old technologies that are coming online, and high frequency light that's going to be very cleansing and purging. So I see that as incredibly positive. And boy, then when we get into July, that really is a peak time, because this unique astrological configuration I've been talking about with Pluto, Uranus in trine and Saturn, Neptune at the midpoint. Saturn has moved on by July, but Pluto, Uranus, Neptune at the midpoint, which is again a completely unique configuration, that reaches exactitude in July. It reaches its closest point where all three of those planets come together round about the 18th of July. But we're going to feel that right through the whole year. But that's the peak of exactitude. And this is about idealism, moving to a more perfect reality. It's about living in community. It's feeling very expansive in our consciousness. It's about major growth at that time, both personally and collectively. And also we have this incredible grand trine in fire that's happening on the 24th of July, very soon after the 18th. But as I say, the 18th of July will feel really throughout the entire year. So July is absolutely extraordinary. And it's about heart-based leadership, heart-centered leadership, that we're not being, it's leadership by inspiration and vision, not by domination. Yeah. That's the real shift we're moving to. You being your own hero, not having an external savior, or you are your own hero. Much greater sense of egalitarianism as well. And so this sense of new horizons, of future dreams, compassion, authenticity, altruism coming together, and a sense of cosmic consciousness. I think that Uranus in June, square to the nodal axis, is a sense of cosmic consciousness coming in very strongly, that we have a greater and greater sense of being part of a galactic family, which of course we always have been, but we haven't been aware of it. So yeah, real peak time, June, July. And there's, a lot more detail I could fill in, but yes, very, very powerful.
Yeah, in the gene keys, when you map cycles, and you can look at the actual keys, right? So the year begins with Uranus in gene key 8, and gene key 8 is really interesting actually, because that key, the shadow of that key, is about imitation, and it's about mediocrity. And if you think of AI, right, because it's an incredibly creative key, it's the key of the individual creative artist, the virtuoso, the genius inside each of us, the incredible art maker, creator, right, that we're here to be. And Uranus, of course, has that energy very much inside it. So it's programming us, and a lot of the AI stuff that's out there is taking that away from us.
Yeah.
Right. So and it's also based on imitation. AI. I know it innovates, but it innovates through imitating.
Yes.
So it imitates
exactly.
and then innovates. So the deep creative source of each human being is it's not AIable. No.
No,
And
not at all.
and so this is about us reaching much deeper into and becoming. I actually believe there's going to be the very beginnings of a creative renaissance
Yeah.
coming next year.
Yeah.
And I really mean a creative renaissance, because I think there's going to be a retro movement against the AI.
I 100% agree with
right?
that.
So the AI is going to bring a lot of stuff out, and the big corporations are going to be using it in all kinds of clever ways and targeting us, very specifically, because it's very good at that, and it's going to look like it's speaking your specific language, and that it can help you, and you can use it in that way as well. You can use it to help market your things, and you can get caught up in the whole game.
It's a mimicry.
The mimicry, yeah. And you can miss your own beauty, because Gene Key 8, it's the gift of style, and it's the city of exquisiteness. AI is never going to be able to deliver you your own exquisiteness. What is your own exquisite, beautiful thing you are here to transmit out? And that's why you've got to think about that this year, 2026. Think about, what is my highest gift? What is the most exquisite part of my soul I can bring to bear? And you don't have to do it all, but you can seed it next year. You can seed the vision of it. It's a perfect year for seeding a vision. Yeah. So don't put yourself under the pressure that you have to know or create it all in 1 year, but seed it, sow that in the soil of your consciousness. And then that key is going to shift. I can't remember when, but in a few months' time, into the year, it's going to shift into Gene Key 20. Look it up, actually. Just give me a moment. Tell you when it's going to shift. March, I think. So that was the wrong year. I think it is. Let's see. Yeah, it's April. Someone will probably correct me. April. Looks like end of April.
Okay, so that's when Uranus moves into Gemini.
Yeah, Uranus moves into Gene Key 20, which is like another incredible key. And at the shadow level, that's about superficiality. So it's imitation, and so it's continuing on. There's like the AI keeps us at a superficial level, right? Because it keeps us from going deep into our being. It keeps us on the surface of. I'm going to ask AI. No, it's not. It's wonderful, right? In certain things, it solves problems. It helps our life become easier. But I'm saying as a tool that, as a creative tool, like it, you don't want to let it take away your creative impulse. And the 20th Gene Key is about what creativity really does. The creative resurgence brings us into the present. It's about presence. The presence of your soul, the presence of your higher self in the body. So it was never about the product, it was about the presence. That's what creativity is all about. It's not about the product. And AI is all about the product. I'm not anti-AI, but it is about the product, not the process. The process is what's so important, because the process is where the transformation is. So if you give it your transformation, for the sake of getting a product, you've missed your own transformation. Do you know what I mean? You've actually lost the beautiful transformational journey that has then led to you being a more awakened human being. So it's about not giving up that agency. And that's going to take a big, deep load of soul searching for many of us to not get caught out there in the periphery of life and consciousness and all the things that are going on and the exciting things. We can use it and we can be inspired by it, but it shouldn't become our North Star. Yeah. Our North Star is our soul, and our soul is in the body, and the body can't be you can't replicate this body. This is your body. and you've got to be embodied in it. And so that Gene Key 20 is really directing us into an embodied process next year, a creative embodiment, a renaissance. So I really feel like that there's going to be a backlash where people maybe return to things like handcrafts or more retro movements where you're actually doing right brain things, and instead of the left brain everything algorithms, we're going to do more embodied things, that bring us into the moment, whether it's working in your garden or on the earth or with animals, or as you said, healing aspects of the earth, or local community, or growing food, or circular economies and close up community. That's the grassroots movement that's emerging, and beginning to emerge next year. So I believe one of the lines of the year actually is in my new Sage book is called Circular Economy. So it's really about like localizing your kind of bringing a local energy to what you're doing, so that you're really connecting to the environment that your body actually lives in. So it's not all online. And that's why, through my programs, and we do these online retreats, but the online retreats do the opposite of what they look like they're doing. They actually are making you more embodied in your environment where you actually live. And that's the purpose of them. A good online retreat should take you offline. Regularly, and bring you into your life and into your body and into your work, in your environment, your community, the people that live near you, the animals, the creatures, the plants that live near you. It should make you more, make you feel more part of things, in your locale. So I think that's going to be a big movement sprouting next year.
100%. And what you've been sharing so fits again with the astrology, Richard, because this sense of decentralization is very Aquarian. We've moved out of Capricorn. Pluto left Capricorn fully in November last year, 2024, and that was kind of acute centralization. Rich people at the top telling we poor peasants at the bottom what to do, and we're done with that. We're done with that kind of verticality in our socioeconomic structure. So Aquarian energy is the power shifting to the people, the power shifting to communities. And what you're saying about Uranus, the shadow side is a kind of engineered version. It's been interesting when Uranus has spent time in the last 7 years or so in Taurus, because Taurus is also natural resources and food. This is the time when fake meat has been produced, and that is so Uranus in Taurus. And if you think of Taurus, the sign of the bull, fake meat, it's absolutely literal. Whereas the higher expression of Uranus, as Richard has been talking in my language, is the unique essence. It's your unique individuality, your unique essence, in a way that you may not have ever known it so fully before. And it's an interesting mix, the Aquarian energy, because Uranus rules Aquarius, of a combination of discovering, maybe for the first time, your unique essence, recognizing that is your gift, but also wanting to put it back into the whole, into the community. So it's, yes, a more extreme understanding of your unique essence, but not just for you, but for all, putting it back into the community. So I think that's exactly how the astrology is playing out. And it's so interesting in June that Uranus square that nodal axis is going to be when we're really going to be feeling that very strongly. And this sense of embodiment, moving out of the head. And I frankly have been very heady. I've learnt my astrology in a very kind of mathematical, analytical way. And I'm going to have to shift big time into a different way of being, which is why I'm doing so much breath work, even more than I've done, and the shamanic course, to get myself into the body in a bigger way and out of this kind of very analytical mind that I've had up to now. So I have to be very disciplined and change my way of being, and I'm absolutely committed to doing that. So
I think it's a great example as well of what's required of everyone, like to really find out what is your inner commitment to your embodiment going to look like for you. You need to ask yourself that question and then really go deeply into it. really, so even if it requires a bit of a risk on your part, you have to extend a bit more than you're comfortable to commit to that, whatever it is, that is a risk that you should take.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a one-time incredible opportunity for you to really make a jump in your own evolution. It's only just like 3i Atlas, it's going to come around, it's only going to come around one time. Yeah. It's not on a repeating orbit. This is, and it's so interesting that 3i Atlas almost symbolizes that. This is a one-off. And so we've talked quite a lot about 2026. Shall we move on to 2027 now, Richard? Because I know you feel that's the really big year.
Yeah, well, in the Gene Keys world and in the human design world, that year is part of a trinity of moments, of kind of massive moments, like that began in 1987 with the harmonic convergence, and then went into 2012 with what I call the melodic resonance, and then 2027 I call the rhythmic symphony. And so you have harmony, melody, rhythm, and those and it's all part of one massive transition into a new epoch. And that epoch then is kind of in 2027. That's the kind of, okay, the orchestra's done all their warming up. The conductor lifts up his, what's it called? This little
baton.
His baton, taps it. They all fall silent, and then the music begins. And it begins gently, and the rhythm is the most powerful moment of the whole thing. So that's what 2027 kind of feels like energetically. It's like, wow, a new sense of inner order being current, like perhaps a new sense of collective awakening. So I can imagine, like I was sharing with Pam, I've started having dreams of interconnectivity that have come just very recently. Like I call them top shelf dreams. You'll know what I mean, those of you listening to this. Like every now and again you get a top shelf dream, right? Doesn't come from the middle or the bottom. It's not one of those standard ones. It's like, oh my goodness, that was a really special one. And I've started having those, and they don't come very often, but they've been about interconnected consciousness fields. And I think that we could, as those of us who have done and are continuing to do our shadow work, will have a lot more of those top shelf dream experiences, because that new consciousness starts to then network us and network with us. We become part of its neurocircuitry. And that could be an incredibly exciting time for us, because it's the new consciousness emerging in its bright, extraordinary form, and we've never seen anything like it. It's like the dragonfly emerging from being an underwater predator. Suddenly, it's like got wings, and it's iridescent, and you're like, "What the hell is this thing?" And so it doesn't bear. If you compared it to what it was in the old cycle, you can't even extrapolate that it's connected. It doesn't look connected, And that's what this closing door is about. Once the door's shut, the connection's broken. The new energy is in, it's locked in, and it will stay locked in for the next cycle, the next grand cycle. And the mini grand cycle is another 450 years or so, right? And then there's another shift. But it's a much bigger cycle that we're starting. And so, yeah, it's good. I don't know what it's going to look like and feel like, but I guess, for me, my whole journey began back in 1996, when I had this big 3-night experience of seeing through the lens of the future human for 3 days. I was gifted this energy, and that led to eventually to the Gene Keys and to the revelations that I've been given. And so now we're at the future human. So we're at that phase where those gifts, those siddhi gifts, can start to come online. For those of us who've prepared the ground, it won't happen if you haven't prepared the ground. If you haven't done your basic kind of homework, that can't land in you. It just can't. And so you've really got to take responsibility for your own, you know, shit, basically. I don't know how else to say it. And really dig deep into your, you know, in next year in 2026, so that that can land in you in 2027, and you can become the dragonfly. You can begin to experiment with your new wings, and the wings of your higher centers, of your higher consciousness. And I don't say that as a dreamy thing or a sort of new agey thing. I say that as that's a very rooted in the body experience. You know, it's like when I look at that cycle that called the Sleeping Phoenix, it's very embodied. It is not a wafty up in the sky thing. It's all the wings are in the body. They come out of the body. They're grounded in the body, in the earth. So it's those indigenous cultures and things we're talking about, like that's the grounding that we need. We need that localized thinking in order that we can have the galactic experience, you know, of the new consciousness.
Yeah, I really agree with that, Richard, because there's a sort of, we have to turn inwards to the simple in order to expand out. And another very, very specific thing that's happening in 2026 and continuing into 2027 is Uranus in next May 2026 is exactly conjunct the dwarf planet Sedna. She is my real symbol of metamorphosis. So Uranus is like the ignition of the metamorphosis, the change of state. And that's exact in May, but they stay conjunct through the rest of 26 and 27, and then Uranus starts to move on. But yes, there's this, because Uranus is then in Gemini for another, until 2033, there's the sense of clarity, a sense of a higher octave coming in very strongly with this. And 2027, because the outer planets are then all settled in their new signs, there's a sense of greater harmony and coherence, and I think rhythmic resonance, rhythmic harmony.
Symphony.
Yeah, they're beautiful. They're all kind of settled in their new signs, and that's how I think it'll be. And I just have such a sense of ancient Lemuria coming back online with this reverence for nature, reverence for Gaia, respect for all living beings, you know, this sense of oneness that's coming in much more strongly that will guide us. I feel that so strongly, being a nature lover and an animal lover and, you know, all of that. But so the big things for me astrologically, and I obviously need to look this in much more detail, but the big things are, as of the end of April 2027, Chiron moves into Taurus until 2033, the same period of time that Uranus is there. And that really is going to heal the earth, heal our bodies and heal the earth in a very big way. But also a very big thing that is going to really colour the entire year is that there is on the 2nd of August 2027, a total solar eclipse at 9:56 of Leo, almost 10 degrees of Leo. Leo, of course, being heart energy, heart leadership. And that's very powerful. It's opposing Pluto, it's squaring Chiron, it's trying to Neptune and Manwe, the dwarf planet that's the highest archangel closest to the mind of God, who originally is said in myth to have helped to birth this universe. And it is the longest and biggest eclipse of this century, of the 21st century. It will last in totality 6 minutes, 23 seconds, but the partial eclipse on either side will last much longer. And what's very interesting is the eclipse path goes through Egypt, Spain, and Africa, particularly North Africa. I find it fascinating that it's going through Egypt, because I think it's a solar eclipse, so big new moon, big new beginning, will reignite a lot of the ancient wisdom and knowledge. We already know about all they've discovered under the pyramids, that they weren't just, you know, burial tombs. They've never found a body there, but they had very advanced technology. We know that already from the Italian research team that did all those discoveries. There is so much more to come from those pyramids in Egypt. And also, I believe by astrocartography, that's running through Washington, D.C., Central and South America, Turkey, Ukraine, Africa. That's looking at it by astrocartography. But I will be saying much, much more about this as we get into 2027. But it is the longest and most important total solar eclipse of the 21st century. And that's 2nd of August 2027. That will colour the entire year. And the influence of that will continue into 2028. But the unique astrological configuration that I've been talking about will then be breaking up. It will be losing exactitude, really, from that point on.
I'm just sort of imagining forward into 2027, and I can see these two opposing paths, if you like, and you know, you know, in Gene Key's, you know, I look at the path of Neptune as well. It's quite interesting, and Neptune is currently in Gene Key 25. Is there a long time? And 25 is the Gene Key of love. It's constriction in the shadow, but it's universal love.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's working on our hearts very, very deeply, secretly in a way. And it's only when it sort of shifts that you realize what's happened. And it shifts in from that key in August again, 2027. And I think it's August. No, it's not. It's earlier than that. It's earlier actually. It first shifts in March 2027, but it shifts into Gene Key 17 as really interesting transition, 25 to 17, because the 25 is the heart and the 17 is the third eye.
Wow.
And so the third eye only opens after the heart has opened. Right? Wow. So otherwise you don't see through the eye of omniscience, which is what 17th city is, omniscience. So universal love leads to omniscience. And what I was thinking though, as you were talking about Egypt and those ancient civilizations and things, there's another way of looking at that, is that in those of us who have done the preparation, and as those higher centers are opening up, we may start to remember or see in our mind's eye, through our third eye, some of that sacred knowledge that was lost to us.
100%.
And
I
so
really
it may start returning into the collective higher mind in a mystical way. It may or may not appear on the outside, as we could unlock more tombs or whatever, but I think we will unlock them on the inside. And what that made me wonder is also, so there's that opening on the inside, but then I was thinking about what the hell's going to be going on the outside, and I was remembering, oh, that's probably like American elections ramping up, you know, towards 2028, and I imagine that'll be a time of utter chaos.
And it feels so old
on the outside, you know, and there'll be AI elections, if you know what I mean.
It just feels old energy.
So old energy may be like really kind of, you know, causing a lot of friction out there as it's beginning its serious decline. You know, and I think it'll be more and more apparent to more and more people that this is a broken system. It's like more and more people are going to be disillusioned, which is why you're going to get this grassroots movement appearing more. And the grassroots movements have always been invisible, right?
Quiet, loving.
They're just quietly over here cultivating that meadow and opening up that farm and serving that community. And that's what we're going to have to be focused on. We're going to, like the wings of the dragonfly, open very tenderly, they're very delicate. You know, I mean, this is an incredible creature, but it's delicate as well. And so you don't want to be sucked in by the declining energy of an old civilization that will carry on declining probably for decades.
Loudly.
Yeah.
Loud. That's going to be the loud stuff. So how is your life defined? Is it by the external moving inwards on you and feeling, you know, that life happens at you? Or is it going to be very quietly, lovingly and peacefully that you're going to be living from the inside out? And as I say, this whole evolution could, if you're on the timeline of fear and look at the war and look at the tragedy and the awfulness and how the world's such a mess, you're not even going to notice probably this evolutionary path that's quiet smiles to strangers and helping neighbours with shopping and looking after your neighbour's child, or, you know, it's going to be quiet, loving, compassionate, peaceful. It's not necessarily going to be loud. In fact, it won't be loud. The loud stuff is the collapsing 3D.
Yeah, totally. And again, the creative renaissance.
Yes,
so
huge.
One of the things we're all going to be doing, everyone watching this video anyway, is we're going to be experiencing a rush of creative intelligence through our system that is going to be so inspiring that who knows what we can create with that energy. There's no limits to what we can create. And it's not about the product. It's not even about healing the world. It's actually just about allowing the process, because that's what it means to be a human, is to be a creator.
Yeah.
And you may create solutions to big problems, or you may just create a quiet little backwater garden somewhere, whatever your creative gift is. And it'll be collaborative, I think, more than it probably ever was.
Absolutely.
I think the days of the artist in the kind of closed-in studio may be numbered, because creativity is beginning to kind of move between our neurons, so it's moving between us collaboratively, because it wants us, the universal consciousness of that love wants us to be a creative collective. Because we're capable of so much more that way. So small groups of coherence, islands of coherence,
Absolutely.
Right?
What's that beautiful quote?
Yeah, small islands of coherence have a massive impact on systems.
Yeah.
Way more than we can.
And each of those can be one of those islands of coherence, or a small group of 2, 3, 4 people.
Yeah, and you see, take the world of business, for example, right? Small islands of coherent, kind of higher intelligence entering into the business world, which are already beginning. Now they've got little roots of that. That has a huge impact, because you're seeding divine truth. And if you've got divine truth on your side, it's going to move into the hierarchies and heterarchies, and it's going to find, it's going to work its magic.
I think it will work that way too. It isn't just the collapse of the old, it's the new consciousness coming through the old to some extent as well. And, I think even by 2027, we will be in a very different world, but that world is down to each of us right now, that we step into a sense of bigger co-creation and weaving with the astrological energy than we have ever had before. Become the co-creator, become the co-participant, become the co-producer. And we don't know what that currently blank canvas is going to look like by the end of 2027, but it's down to us, and how good can it get?
Absolutely. How good can it get? And 2028, who knows? It's a mystery, isn't it? Draw a line under it.
Yeah.
For yourself.
Yeah, because it's a very different energy beyond this very accelerated 3-year phase. So is there anything you'd like to say in closing, Richard? We've been running for about an hour 15 now.
I think I've really enjoyed this conversation. I've loved hanging out with you, Pam. I'd definitely come and hang out with you again and walk. I think, I guess on a practical note, I've spoken about what my year is going to be like and all of that. And if you want to find out more, I'm doing a lot of stuff for the rest of this year. I'm doing these little tea ceremony phases called the Sages Tea Party. And if you just tune into Gene Keys, you'll come along. I'm going to do a specific one on the Gene Keys of 2026, where I'm going to read them from my new book, The Sage, because I want you to understand. I want to kind of share with people what these energies are specifically. And they have little bits of kind of poetry that go with them that kind of can help you understand in a more dialed way, like what is going to be required of us energetically entering into 2026. And if you're interested, if you're kind of wild and crazy enough to come along to one of my retreats, or all of them even, I've had quite a lot of people have committed to the whole thing already, actually. Maybe over 500 people. And it's a very global movement, Jinky, so it's kind of fun, because you get people from Mongolia and people from Australia and
Amazing.
people from, all creeds and colours, and you'll get to meet them. You'll get to kind of hang out. So yeah, if you're interested, come and it's called The Sage's Golden Path. The Sage is the name of my new book, which is going into the program. So for the first time ever, if you come along, you will get your Gene Key lines, which are specific to you. and they've never been seen or read by any other person. So you'll be one of the first to read them. And I've been reading some to Pam. They're quite poetic and
Beautiful,
contemplative, and I've spent many years creating them and curating them. So I hope it'll be an inspiring journey for all of us. And Pam may pop along at some point. And yeah, so if you're interested in that, do check out Gene Keys, and you'll hear more.
Yeah, beautiful. It's been wonderful to spend the day with you, Richard, and yeah, just riff together and share a lot, and yeah, just feel excited, people. Just feel excited. Choose love, choose joy, choose peace, choose compassion, and really commit. Even if you just say to yourself, this is an experiment, but commit. Don't wobble. Don't keep going back to the news and saying, oh my God. Commit your energy, your focus, your attention. Keep on thinking through the lens of this is going to be great, and how good can it get?
Yeah. So when you get to 2027, at the beginning, you can look back on 2026 and you can go, wow, what a year.
And be proud.
And I was there.
Plan to be proud. Plan, even if you're standing dusty and battered in the ashes, plan to be proud. Yeah. This is a lifetime where you can really be proud of yourself and move an incredible way in your consciousness within one lifetime.
You can always imagine it. I made it.
Yeah. Heroism. So it's been wonderful to share with you, Richard. Wonderful to share with all of you listening. And God bless. And I hope you've enjoyed this as much as Richard and I have. Bye for now. Be back soon.